Well, hello, and we are live. Wave everybody, say hello. Welcome to Rombauer Hour Cellar Edition. Today we are tasting some library wines, and we're going to, in fact, taste a bunch of Merlots. We've got a number of vintages. We're going to do our 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 17 vintage. Not 18. I almost said 18, but it's not out yet. We have made these wines available on our website. It's a very limited release. We only have a small amount of these wines left. They will be available until Sunday on our website or until sold out, which will probably happen. We still do have 1 cent shipping, so if you haven't purchased these already and you, like what we're saying when we taste the wine, saying you like to purchase them, I suggest jumping online fairly quickly at rombauer.com and grabbing them. We are doing a cheese pairing today with our wines, as well as our normal Joya cooking pairing. These recipes and a list of the cheeses will be available on our website. If you go to the live stream, is it live stream? Rombauer Hour tab at the bottom of the website, you'll be able to go and get a list of the cheeses and the recipes from the Joya cooking that we're doing. But before we get started, I feel I have to introduce the team I have with me today, and it's a little bit of a switch up. We have a few different people.
Fresh faces.
So, fresh faces. We got sick of the other two jokers. So we're going to go for it.
Okay, my name is Alan Cannon. I'm the Director of Distributor Relations and Education for Rombauer Vineyards. I've been with the winery almost 20 and a half years.
So you just got here?
I just got here. Yeah, I'm still on probation with bad jokes and things like that. So normally I
He's not joking either.
Normally I spend about 2/3 of my time out in the marketplace. So it's sort of nice to be home, I guess.
I would say Alan knows more about the history of Rombauer than anyone except for probably KR Rombauer.
And if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up.
Yes,
so I'm excited to be tasting Merlot today because it's not only is it a staff favorite, but it's my favorite of all of our red wines.
And then my usual sidekick.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Luke Clayton, the winemaker here. Been going on 15 harvests here at Rombauer. I'm excited to taste this Merlot lineup. It's been a while, so I'm excited to see how they're aged and developed and see what's happened to my Merlot babies over the years. But that's enough from me. Let's hear from...
and lastly, we have...
Hi, I'm Carrie Baxter. I am hospitality and direct-to-consumer sales at our Napa Vineyard location. And I've been with the company for almost 2 years, but just like you guys, really excited to be tasting through Merlot, one of my favorite varietals. So can't wait to get started.
And you have the best radio voice of all of us.
Well, if you haven't already, your bottle should be open. And we should have a glass full of Merlot today, but if you don't have Merlot, any of the other varieties will do today.
So I guess I'm chopped liver. I can't introduce myself.
Oh, that's Richie.
Yeah, so I'm Richie Allen. I'm his boss, the Director of Viticulture and Winemaking. So, as Luke said, if you haven't got a bottle of Merlot open, now is the time to get stuck into it.
Well, I really think that is more important than your introduction, Richie. You already spoke for 5 minutes before you introduced us, so... How about we get the wines?
Get the wines open.
Get the wines open.
Thanks so much. And a couple of sessions ago during our Rombauer Hour Entertaining Edition, we had Reagan and Charlotte virtually hosting, kind of explaining how to set up your own very jazzy cheese and charcuterie board. So we figured we would feature that today as well. These cheeses and charcuteries, they are all mentioned on the website, so you don't need to get a notepad and jot down very quickly what's going on. But we basically have aged Gouda, Comté, Petit Basque, and Bella Vitano cheeses. We have prosciutto. We also have Coppa, Toscano salami, and Calabrese salami. Again, we'll just kind of mention these pairings as we go through the Merlots and kind of explain why we think they pair well.
They look good. I know Andrew's jealous.
Andrew's missed out again.
As well he should.
As well he should. Well, Alan, why don't you take us through a little bit of Rombauer's history of Merlot rather than me having to do it? That would be fantastic.
I can probably do that.
Fantastic.
Thanks for the trade-off. Merlot was the third wine that we've made ever. We started making Merlot in 1983. From 83 through 05, we had a Napa Valley appellation. from '05, and then in '05 we actually did a Carneros as well, and then in '06 we transitioned over to Carneros. So from 2006 to 2013 we made a Carneros appellation, and then in 2014 we went back to Napa for better fruit source.
But it's still Carneros fruit.
It's still Carneros fruit.
So it's just labeled Napa Valley, but it's still from Napa Carneros.
Then starting in about 2010 and 11, Richie and the winemaking team, including this guy over here, started to barrel ferment some of the red wines, and that's made a huge difference in our production of all of our reds, but especially the Merlot. Kerner started making this in 1983 because he felt it was a varietal that he liked and that people would enjoy. And it was also a varietal that was coming into its own in the early to mid 1990s. What some people don't realize is that Merlot is actually the most planted red grape variety in the world. It's the largest planting in Bordeaux, and it's the fourth largest planting in California. So we still make it, we like it, and it is a staff favorite. So
It is definitely a staff favorite.
staff favorite.
Actually, we never spoke about why we like Merlot. We're supposed to do that in the intro. Why Merlot is one of our favorite varietals.
Pair with food, the acid, juicy fruit, enjoy wine, cheese. Get
Goes
it in
with
there.
everything.
I personally, it's my favorite. I think it is. If you look at the top wines of the world, and you went over to the right bank of Bordeaux, and you went to Pomerol, some of the most expensive wines in the world to this day are still made from Merlot, and it's a little more challenging to grow and make into a really good wine than Cabernet. There's a reason why Cabernet is so widely planted. It's tolerates a lot of climates and a lot of winemaking haphazardry. Yeah. But Merlot is definitely, you got to be a lot more careful, and it's harder to make and to do well. And that's why I enjoy it personally.
And the first mention of Merlot, at least in Europe, was in 1783. There might be a quiz later.
The quiz later. Okay. Well, as Alan said, we're sourcing fruit from Carneros, and in 2005, 2006, we switched over from Carneros to Napa Valley label, but the fruit is all still from Carneros. And if I put up a slide and take you down to the bottom of the valley here, you can see the Carneros region in green there. It spans both Napa and Sonoma counties. And the reason we're looking specifically at the Napa side is it's a little bit warmer and it ripens a little more consistently. It is still cooler than the rest of the Napa Valley. So when we're looking for areas where Merlot does well, if you look historically around the world at where Merlot does really well, it's generally a slightly cooler climate that has quite often a maritime influence, but it has clay soil. And if you look at the valley floor in Napa, there's a lot of alluvial soils. A lot of the best sites for Cabernet are well-drained gravelly soils, as you'd see on the left bank of Bordeaux. But in Carneros, you have clay loam, and a specific type of hair clay loam, or specific type of clay called hair clay loam, named after the Hare family, and Jim Hare is actually one of our Chardonnay growers. But you can see a couple of sites there, Blue Creek, Hudson, which is a block we get from Lee Hudson, and our Buckley Station vineyard, which is at the southern tip of the Napa Valley. And that Merlot block at Buckley is actually the southernmost block of Merlot in the Napa Valley. But when you grow Merlot down there in a cool site, or a more moderate site with that proximity to that maritime influence, it ripens slower. You have less heat stress on the vine, and Merlot is very susceptible to heat stress or hydraulic stress when it gets very, very hot, like you'd see up on the south side of St. Helena or Calistoga. And so if you don't have those stresses on the vine, you can continue to ripen at a pretty consistent rate during water deficit without the vine shutting down. And so one of the first vines to shut down the heat stress is going to be Merlot. And it doesn't actually ripen anymore. You just lose water, and the sugar concentration keeps climbing because you're losing water. But if you can keep it warm without too hot, it continues to ripen. You get beautiful, rich, soft, flavorful Merlot that has varietal intensity, so lots of plum, lots of spice, and it gets very rich on the palate and still tastes like Merlot. So,
yeah, mate, that's
I've waxed lyrically a little bit too long.
Mate, I tell you what, I think I want a drink now.
Yeah, I think we should talk about the 13, which is the first wine we have.
All right. So 2013 vintage, I'll give you a quick overall. It was a beautiful day, beautiful harvest. It was a warm, dry spring, brought early bud break, Alan, with ideal conditions during flowering and fruit set, which was just perfect for the harvest. Optimum temperatures during the growing seasons allowed us to pick at optimum ripeness. Basically, Mother Nature was very kind to us in 13, and we could basically go along and pick the sections as we felt needed. We'll go to the vineyard, we'll taste the grapes, see how they tasted, see how they get the nice ripe flavours, and then we'll basically pick each section as we feel was necessary. And then I'll talk quickly why I'm on about the process when it comes into the winery. These are very similar for all the vintages of Merlot, except for as we go along in the vintages, we make small little tweaks to each vintage to try and make it better. But basically we either pick early in the morning or at night under lights, and that bringing the fruit in cold light, that helps retain the fruit and the freshness in the wines. And then from there we'll come and to stem the grapes, and we'll go on to the optical sorters. So the optical sorter, if you don't know, it actually takes a photo of every berry, every grape, every leaf, and it will keep all the nice, healthy, dark berries like some that you see on there, but any pink, green, unripe berries, you actually shoot them off, and it just makes expensive compost for us back in the vineyard. But, yeah. Nope.
No, I didn't have a question. Right. No, keep going, mate. Keep going.
And then from there, once we destemmed the fruit and we got gone through the optical sorter, we got this beautiful grapes. And what are we going to do with it? Well, over the years, Alan early mentioned in 2010, we started a barrel fermentation program. And basically what we did, we got trained cellar guys that would pop the hoops off, pop the head off, and they'll actually fill them about 400 pounds in each barrel. And then the guys will have to put the head back on and the hoops back on, and then we'll put them into the barrel fermentation room. We'll actually spin it by hand. And the beauty about that, it gives us such more weight, texture on the palate, and the integration of oak is so much seamless. And then as we go along, we sort of found it that 25 to 30% is kind of a sweet spot for us in the Merlot. And then the others would go to tank fermentation for traditional tank fermentation, where we use a pump to pump it over to extract the colour, extract the tannin, and then to make sure we're left with plush, ripe wines that we are doing deliciously right now. I lost my train of thought again.
There was a question that popped up on the feed. Why did we change from Canaris to Napa Valley if it's still a source from Canaris? And honestly, the truth behind that is it gives us a little more blending flexibility. As we go through the wines, you'll see that the percentage of Merlot varies a little, and we always blend in a little bit of Cabernet or Petit Verdot. And by labeling Napa Valley, legally we can be 75% Merlot, and it gives us a little more flexibility to blend in other things. So stylistically, we can make the wine more consistent every year. And if you looked at, say, a model that you would see like from Bordeaux, like Right Bank Bordeaux, they have this blending flexibility. And even in other parts of the world where you have to label a wine, a Merlot or a Cabernet, it has to be 85% that varietal. By keeping it Napa Valley there and not Carneros, it gives us 10% more flexibility to get the wine to where we'd like it to be and make it more consistent and hopefully make it taste better.
Exactly.
And since Richie was talking about blends on the 13 Merlot, this one's 88% Merlot and then 12% Cabernet Sauvignon. Spent about 17 months in French oak, 30% of it was new, and about 30% of this was barrel fermented.
So the reason, as Luke said earlier, the reason we barrel ferment is to impart a little more depth and richness into wine and to help with the integration of oak flavour. And it's actually that barrel fermented portion, that 30%. This wine only receives about 30% new oak as well, so it sort of ties it all together. But let's talk about the wine.
Yes. All right.
So being 13, and it was, as Luke said, it was a very, very good vintage. It's now got several years in the bottle. It's starting to lose a little bit of its primary fruit, so that bright plum and spice, and it's starting to soften a little and starting to develop some secondary characteristics or age characteristics. So it's starting to get a little bit of briary or brackeny, like dried fern or dried undergrowth, a little bit of mushroom, and that's in the background. In front of that is like a rich plum and cherry and spice. And 13 was an incredible vintage. It was one of the best vintages I've ever seen since I've been making wine. And so, this wine's going to go the long haul, honestly.
This could honestly age for 5 to 7 more years.
Easily.
Yeah, I remember when we first bottled it, the tannins were really big, but now 5 years in the bottle, they've really started to smelled and soften, and it's really come around really nice.
Still got enough texture though, or like tannin structure to keep it going long term. A lot of people always ask, how well will this wine age? And it really comes down to a combination of factors between how the wine's balanced. And if you have too much tannin in a wine and not enough fruit, eventually that fruit's going to fade and the wine's going to be left very hollow and tannic. But if you have enough fruit concentration and intensity of flavor to balance the tannin, it should age very well. And that's what we see in this wine is there's 13s had incredible tannin, but they had enough fruit weight to back it up. So they're built for long-term aging. And with the natural acidity in Merlot, especially from Carneros, which is cooler, it retains a natural higher, brighter acidity, which we don't have to mess with at all. That also helps the wine age a little bit longer.
And it's too bad that most of you probably don't have this wine in front of you because it is proof positive that Merlots do age and do age very well.
Yes. Hey, Richie, we got a question for you, mate.
Yes.
What does the Cab and Petit Verdot do to the Merlot?
Oh, the Cab and the Petit Verdot. So what the Cabernet does, Merlot inherently has a very soft mid-palate and traditionally round tannins. In Bordeaux, they would traditionally use Merlot to fill out the mid-palate of Cabernet. So knowing that the Merlot has this rich mid-palate and quite often soft tannins, it doesn't have enough tannin structure in it to balance out the wine. It ends up being almost too soft and doesn't have enough structure or texture on the palate. So the Cabernet adds a little bit of tannin, but more importantly, the Cabernet we're using is specifically from our Bennett Lane vineyard. And the fruit characteristic of that vineyard is very strong cassis and it pairs very well with the plum. And it adds a depth of flavor and helps fill out the back palate. The Petit Verdot, which is probably one of the most tannic of the 5 Bordeaux varietals, what we have this is actually from Bennett Lane as well. It's very, very high in color and it has a big tannin structure, but it's a very soft, big tannin. And so it fills out the wine and gives it more depth and volume. So a little bit of Cabernet and a smaller amount of Petit Verdot in most years are what we blend in with the Merlot just to help fill it out. And we're talking earlier about why it's labeled Napa Valley versus Carneros, even though it's all from the Carneros region of the Napa Valley. When we label it Napa Valley, it gives us a little more flexibility, and we're allowed to blend in up to 25% of something else. If it was labeled Carneros, it'd only be 15%. And we have an idea when we're blending these wines, before we put the blend together, what we'd like it to taste like, and then we blend with that idea in mind, and we want to hit a certain quality level. And so that percentage of Cabernet and Petit Verdot is going to change most years. We don't have a set amount that we add, but it's all done based on taste. So right prior to bottling, usually in February or March, we start assembling the final blend, and that's when we decide how much of each component goes in. So it's a good question.
Well, thanks for answering that for me, Richie. You know what? I think, Kerry, I got a question for you. What cheese would you pair with this one?
I'm so glad that you asked. With this, we have paired an aged Gouda, aged about 5 years. Gouda is originally from the Netherlands. It is a cow's milk-based cheese. And actually, this is a mouthful, but there's calcium lactate crystals in aged Gouda. Say that 3 times fast. But if you ever get a slight crunch when you're eating a premium Gouda, it's literally calcium that has solidified. And it's quite delightful. It's a beautiful texture. One thing of note on aged Gouda, this is a cheese you really don't want to eat the rind on this cheese. If it's been aged for 5 years, it's a lot of exposure. So
it's like
leave
a dirty
that
pair
aside.
of old socks.
Yeah, let's not take any chances. And then our Joy of Cooking pairing, which for those of you that don't know, the Rombauer family is directly affiliated with the Joy of Cooking recipe book. And our pairing with this is one of our favorites, roasted rack of lamb. Looks
So we've actually got that up on the screen. I've been asking for rack of lamb for pairing the last Cabernet tasting. We finally got it for the Merlot tasting, which is probably where it deserves to be.
Looks delicious.
But rack of lamb is definitely one of my favorites. I know it's one of Luke's favorites. We regularly get together and have rack of lamb. But the recipe for how this lamb is prepared, if you go to the rombauer.com, go down to the live streaming tab, you'll be able to see it there. Are you laughing at the comments, Luke?
Yeah, I just saw Bello.
Oh, Bello's on. Hey, Bello. Bello is an old intern who started here
05?
05, and I think he was here for 07 from Brazil. He went on to do his PhD in yeast genetics in Belgium. So g'day, Bello. Hey, mate.
All right.
But 14.
Now, if you got the lineup, 2014.
If you got the lineup.
All right. This was Richie, this was a real early harvest.
It was.
Yeah,
very early harvest. The earliest harvest on record until 17?
17?
Yep.
I don't know. I'll have to wait till I get to the 17 section. But yes,
Keep them in suspense.
I will. It was really warm actually this harvest, surprising. Early harvest with the dry conditions, 2 weeks early ahead of normal, Alan. Mm-hmm. Third year of great weather during harvest, during the growing season. So with quality wines, with depth of flavour, soft plush wines that year. And did I mention it was early, Richie?
You did.
Oh, great. Well, you know what? That's enough. This is my favourite bit, actually. I hope
tasting of the wine?
Too. Tasting of the wine.
It's interesting because 14, I mean, if you looked at it in comparison to a lot of the other vintages, being earlier, being very hot, they were very, very powerful wines from a fruit standpoint. So they're very, very intense, but they're also very tannic wines. So 14 was the year when we're making the wines and we're going through the winemaking process. It was all about trying to manage this harder tannin in the grape skins and still make a wine that was soft and rich. Whereas 2013, even though 2013 had more tannin that leached out, you had more fruit intensity. And 14 was definitely
this one
a ripe, rich year.
Try this, just whacks you in the face with dark fruit, richness. It hasn't developed as much as 13 yet, but it's just
No, it hasn't,
full and powerful and
So the blend on this one is 77% Merlot. I knew you knew that.
I didn't.
21% Cabernet Sauvignon and 2% Petit Verdot. About 30% was barrel fermented, aged 17 months in oak, and about 40% of it was new this year. And as Richie mentioned before, one of the reasons that the percentages of the Merlot or the Cab or the Petit Verdot vary is just so we can come up with close to a house style, and we're looking for a specific style of Merlot.
So it's not formulaic ever. It's always by palate.
Every year is different, depending on what they want to do and how much.
It's not a case of what we want to do. We know what we have to make, Alan.
It depends on how late
what we want to do.
Depends on how late they've been up the night before. It's like they'll just blend us and go.
Actually, having been a little more sensitive to alcohol the next morning is always a good thing when blending, I must say.
Senses are a bit wild.
Yeah, if the last thing you want is a glass of wine in the morning because you had a glass too many the night before, it definitely helps. You appreciate how intense the flavour is and makes you more acutely aware of what you're blending, that's for sure.
Yeah, but this one's 4 years in bottle and it's still fresh as daisy. It's got that weight, rich depth.
Dark berry, plummy fruit.
Yeah.
Almost get like a blueberry note in here. That's
There's
really
definitely
nice
a blueberry
too.
note. And that, this one has a pretty good percentage of Cabernet. It's sort of 2% off legally not being a Merlot. But the Cabernet in that is all Bennett Lane again. It's 2014. It was from Bennett Block 1A, which did really, really well. Shout out to Patrick Tokar, our viticulturalist, because he was in charge of that block in 2014. But it was probably one of the best years we've ever had from that particular block. And we used most of the Cabernet in this particular blend was from Block 1A at Bennett.
Yeah. Oh, it's delicious. You know what? I feel like I need cheese with it, Kerry. What do you
the cheese.
Just need cheese with life, no pun intended. That being said, we have a Bello Vitano cheese located here. And this is actually from Plymouth, Wisconsin, of all places. It's
not to be confused with Plymouth in the Sierra Foothills, where our new tasting room is.
Or Plymouth, Massachusetts.
We don't have a tasting room.
We don't have a tasting
No
room.
tasting room in Mass yet. But that being said, it's a multiple gold medal winning cheese. What's nice about this cheese is it's basically like a richer, creamier version of an Italian Parmesan. And it's just super consumer friendly.
This cheese here, correct?
That is correct.
I'll be trying some of that later.
Oh my gosh, it goes with everything also. I mean, the 14 Merlot, fantastic, but this is a really friendly cheese for when you're pairing at home, and it goes with most wines, which is really fantastic. Also derived from cow's milk. And our joy of cooking pairing
Drum
is...
roll.
Why don't you announce it, Richie?
Chicken masala.
That's right. Not chicken tikka masala.
There.
Chicken
Not to be
masala.
confused with its
about that
close
before.
relative, chicken tikka masala. Chicken and mushroom dishes are one of my favourites. So
Really, food
ask
is
my
your
wife.
favorite.
She gets sick of me putting mushrooms in everything. So
Very cool.
You know what? I'm slacking here. Where's Andrew to pour the next wine?
yeah, we need to tee up the next two vintages, I think.
Yes. Well, use this break, people, to get yourself a quick glass while we pour ourselves.
Thank you, sir.
So, 2015 vintage. This one was another early one, wasn't it, mate? I think it was.
15, yeah. So 15. Do you want me to talk about this vintage?
Yeah, go ahead, mate.
All right. So
Oh, yeah.
15 started off it was a relatively warm growing season, and we started early with our bud break, but we had a very unusual weather at flowering. And flowering is the point in the grapevine's yearly growing cycle where you set berry development and growth of the grapes. So at that flowering point, or what we call berry set, we had unusually cool weather, and this disrupted the flowering process. So we had very irregular set. So like if you compared it to 2013, the flowering period where we go through berry set and grape formation was very, very short and was all over very, very quickly, literally a matter of days. Everything was flowered, set, and it was all perfect and even. In 2015, that flowering period was very extended. Some of our blocks flowered over 14 days or more, and that led to this irregular set. So you had berries that had almost different life cycles and lots of shot berries, and that results in a much smaller crop. And a shot berry is a berry that hasn't, a flower that hasn't fertilized properly, and so it forms a little green berry. So when you have this irregular set, you get what's called shatter or hens and chickens, and you get a much smaller crop. So 2015 was one of the smallest crops we've had for a long time for Merlot.
It's 08, wasn't it?
Since 08, yes, yeah.
And,
On the money there, Luke. It was actually 50% smaller in 15 and 08. But what happens in those years when you have smaller crops is you end up with very high concentration. So during the growing season, we had to work it was relatively warm. We had to work pretty hard to manage the canopies. We did some pretty excessive, I wouldn't say excessive, pretty heavy green thinning. So at veraison, which is the point where the grapes start to change colour, if we have any clusters which are lagging and not changing colour and getting darker on time, and everything else is darker, we'll remove those clusters. And then when we came to picking, because of this irregularity in the flowering period, we had a lot of variability within the cluster. So quite often the guys would be hand picking, and one side of the cluster would be dark, and on the back side you'd have a lot of pink fruit. So rather than having 3 picking bins on the back of a trailer that we'd fill, a lot of Merlot was picked with just 2 picking bins. In that third position, we had a sorting table, and there'd be 2 guys there sorting fruit by hand. And as they empty those picking lugs onto that sorting table, 2 guys would sort through the fruit. Anything that was not perfectly ripened would go on the ground, become compost, and only the best clusters would turn up at the winery. The optical sorters had to work overtime because of that irregular set. Even though you had a good cluster, there'd be, 3 to 4% pink or green berries. So the optical sorters, which are photographing every grape and kicking out all those bad grapes and bad material, worked overtime. But we also had to let the fruit hang a little bit longer to ensure that we had more ripe fruit within the cluster. So all that sorting, all of that shatter during flowering, all of that optical sorting resulted in a lot less wine. But it meant a higher quality wine. And if we didn't go that extra step in the vineyard, that extra step hand sorting, that extra step optical sorting, the wine would seem very thin and very green. But when you go that extra step and go the extra mile, you end up with a wine which quite easily sits in the portfolio as a very, very high quality year. And a lot of people, I know Bob Kniebel, our president and CEO, he tried through these wines the other day, and this is one of the ones that he bought a Magnum of because it was his favourite. So
I think he stole it, but that's
I'm going to give a pats on the back to the winemaking team because that means we did our job that year, even though it was a challenge, and made a good wine.
And I hate to say this because I know how hard that you did work that year, but a challenging year for the wine enthusiast is a great year. Mm-hmm. There's such complexity here.
Oh yeah.
I realized that you had to do quite a bit of farming and sorting, but man, this is shining right now.
Fresh
it's
fruit.
definitely got a lot of depth on the palate. Like it's probably of all the wines, in terms of fruit weight and structure of the wine, it's probably the biggest wine of the portfolio at the moment.
Red licorice liqueur on the palate.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And the blend on this is very similar to the last one. I mean, this is 78% Merlot, 18% Cabernet Sauvignon, and then 4% Petit Verdot. So it's not that far off from what the 14 vintage was.
And the winemaking for this particular wine is pretty much in line with the previous vintages. So once it got to the winery, a portion, about a third, 30% roughly, was done for barrel fermentation to give the wine more richness and more depth, and 2/3 roughly done in tank. But yeah, it's I'm actually really, really happy tasting this wine several years on and seeing how well it's developing, and good job winemaking team. Pats on the back.
How much longer would you cellar this for?
15. I mean, it's interesting to try. This is the first time I've tried it probably in 2 or 3 years. So it's definitely holding on well. It has a good amount of structure. but it doesn't have, like, it's a lot of fruit sweetness, but it doesn't have a lot of tannin structure. So I'd probably say this would probably be like a 10-year wine. If you like your wines with a lot of primary fruit and a lot of fruit sweetness, probably in the first 10 years. If you like wines with lots of secondary characters, lots of, briary, bracky, leathery, Christmas cakey, developed Merlot character, probably 10 to 15.
Okay.
And like the previous two wines, this was 70% aged. Actually, it's 17 months in oak. Sorry about that. And then 30% of it's new. So it's similar oak regimen on pretty much all these wines.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Cheese.
Let's talk about
Pass the
cheese.
What
please.
cheese?
So this cheese is Comte, which is from the north of France, Richie, in case you were wondering.
That was a
about
question I did earlier in the rehearsal. And where's that cheese from?
Comte?
Comte.
Comte?
Comte?
Exactly. Close enough for state work. This is an Alpine style cheese. It's not dissimilar to Gruyere. What's really lovely about this cheese, specifically with the 15 Merlot that we're enjoying right now, is it's really making those ripe primary berry notes pop. So by having a piece of this, it's got a mild nuttiness, it's lush, it's approachable, it's got a little kind of fruitiness in and of itself. Pretty amicable cheese, but it's really making these kind of like strawberry jam notes pop in this wine, which is, I love that. So fantastic cheese. Our joy of cooking pairing today.
Drum roll, please.
Ready. Parpadali with roasted tomatoes and mushrooms.
This is
Looks delicious.
a great dish.
It looks awesome.
I do love my pasta. I do love my mushrooms. I do love my tomatoes.
3 of your favorite things in one bowl.
Some Comte cheese on top would be pretty good, actually.
And it's low calorie.
And it's low calorie.
Yes, what will make it better? A little bit of lamb on top for you, Richie?
Lamb ragu, yeah.
Or bacon.
Bacon bits. There goes the vegetarian option. Well done.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, now we're on to 16 Merlot.
Yeah, right.
Take it away, Luke. Tell us about the vintage.
16. Well, if memory serves me correct, it's very similar to 14, but 14 had some heat spikes. But in 16, similar quality, great fruit, plush richness and bright wine. Not as many heat spikes, but just more like 13 temperature-wise, just a constant temperature. Perfect ripening, about 70 to 80 degrees. So the vines just hung out there. The longer out on the vines, the riper, softer tannins, so you lose that greenness and that harshness phenolic. So hopefully it shows in the wine. I haven't tried it yet, but 16. It's one of those sleeper ones. We came back a year later, and then we're tasting through, and we're just like, oh, wow, didn't realize how great 16 was. And this one's probably one of my favorites of today's.
It was definitely one of those vintages where everything came in a very orderly fashion. We never had a heat spike where we had several days over 100 degrees. It was always warm without being super hot. So the vines never shut down. When it gets too hot, the vines shut down. They just kept ticking away. But I remember, like, if you want to call it a normal year, I'm still trying to figure out what that is. But everything came in the order you would expect it to come in terms of how sites ripen. But I just remember being, oh yeah, the wines are good, like Luke said.
Yeah.
But when we came back, what would have been in the spring the following year, and we start doing what we call our first pass, and we taste the wines, we start grading the wines we've made to assess where they're going to go on the blends, start looking at anything. If there's a wine that's not right, will we sell that off as bulk wine and not incorporate it into our blends? And in that particular year, it started, they just shined really, really well.
And it's like seamless integration with the oak, vanilla, get a little chocolate and stuff happening in there. It's really a mouthful.
It was kind of like an immediate gratification vintage. You know
It
what I
was
mean?
and honestly, from a winemaking standpoint, the challenging years are when you earn your keep. That's when you have to work extra hard. And in a year like 16, just like 13, because it was so, I don't want to say easy, it's not the right word. We're still doing 16-hour days, but it was smooth. It just meant that we weren't doing back-to-back 20 and 22-hour days. It all just came in very smooth. It was quite a long harvest season. And so you didn't have to you weren't trying to figure out, how am I going to fix this particular block and get more out of the tank? You were just like, oh, it's really good. I don't have to do much here. I just let nature take its course. And, we always say on the winemaking team, if we get it right in the vineyard, we don't really have to do much in the winery. And if Mother Nature cooperates, literally all we do is we're caretakers to get the wine to bottle. We crush it, we ferment it, and we don't have to mess with it too much. And 16 was definitely one of those years where it literally just flowed.
Yeah.
Like I distinctly remember that and being caught off guard by how good it was.
Yeah, probably the vintages you don't remember are probably the good ones.
Yeah, you definitely remember the really hard ones.
Yeah, the curveballs.
The curveballs.
The 15th.
The 15s, the 17s, the 11s, things like that, all for different reasons.
Stuff that makes Richie lose his hair.
Yeah, I can't. Not much left to lose, mate.
But you know what? This wine's so delicious. I wonder what cheese you'd have with it, Richie. Do you think?
I just want to point out though, this wine, like if you've gone through the wines, aromatically, this is very, very young, and so it has a lot of almost a spearmint minty quality to it, behind that plummy plummy Merlot and that Cassis from that little bit of Cabernet. But there's a definite mint quality to this wine, which makes it very, very interesting.
It's almost about layers.
Yeah, it has a lot of layers of
Complexity.
flavour to it. It's going to be really fascinating to see it age and see how it turns out as you get more complexity through bottle age.
Yeah. Soft plush now, but the legs to go for a while.
That'll be exciting to try.
Run a mile, maybe, Richie. Is that right?
It'll, the legs will run a mile.
Well, we have one of Richie's children's favorite cheeses here, the Petite Basque.
Yes. Trying to keep this away from Violet is always a challenge.
Apparently, she puts a lot of cheeses in your cart at the grocery store.
Yes.
But she's got good taste. So this particular cheese is actually derived from sheep's milk. What's really nice about it is it's soft, it's nutty, it's rich. There's nothing that's just overtly strong about it. So again, just a cheese that really won't overpower a wine like Merlot. This is actually another French cheese from the Pyrenees Mountains on the border of Spain. But just a really classic washed rind on this. Again, really amicable. It's hard to find someone that doesn't like Petite Basque. It's just a really easy cheese to enjoy. Our joy of cooking pairing with this, drum roll for Richie, his favorite.
Back to my favourite lamb.
Braised lamb shanks. And I guess the mintiness in this wine would also complement
yes.
that.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, won't need your mint jelly, that's for sure.
And this is with winter squash and carrots. Looks like a bit of a red wine jus on top of that as well.
I reckon that's a olive tapenade on top.
Oh my gosh, that looks great.
We're all sitting here salivating. More wine, please.
Man, that was good. Sorry, just pause on
Yeah, just pause.
Pretend I'm eating that lamb
Just
shank.
soak it in and enjoy the wine
Yeah.
and the lamb.
I know, I can't wait till later to attack that cheese board. It won't look like that.
Yes.
It's not long now.
As soon as the camera's off, we're hitting that
That's
thing.
it.
We're hitting
Yeah.
that thing.
And I can guarantee we're going to have to boot you all out.
It'll be gone.
17.
17.
17.
We're soldiering along. We're making good time, but we're on to 17.
There's the 17.
All right, 17. Oh, 17 vintage. Oh, wasn't that fun, mate? We had so much
That's a
fun.
polite way of putting it. I'll never forget it, that's for sure.
Yes, that's it. Right, 17. We had early heat spikes in September, which pushed along the grapes and stuff that was ready. It made us pick it faster. And then we had some quick, cool weather just straight after that allowed us to pick the grapes. The sugars came back up, the flavors came back, so we started picking again, which was quite fortunate because, as most of you know by now, the 17, we had a few fires here going around, but we're lucky we had our Merlot in the week before. It was just cold soaking the barrels and tanks. And so we had zero impact on the smoke that year. We're very lucky. Even the fruit in the winery, we always put dry ice on the tanks, which produce CO2 that covers the grapes in the tank to protect them. And then once the fermentation's going, the fermentation's producing CO2, which naturally protects the wine. So
Is that off-gassing? Is that the term?
yes,
Learned something new today.
there's a
Thank
lot of
you,
off
John.
gassing going on in the cellar sometimes.
Just carbon dioxide, no sulfides. Sorry, I just had to straighten up the bottles. A customer pointed out that one of the bottles was on the seam in the table and it was crooked. So thank you for that.
That's right. I just saw the crooked bit. and
I
was
get
like,
lots of text messages from our marketing team in the background making me fix everything that we've got wrong.
Well, at least it's not the wives today.
At least it's not the wives, telling us off for doing silly things.
Oh, yeah, there we go. We just did it then.
That's a tough one.
All right, 17 vintage. But overall, the wines in 17, we're able to get them ripe on the vineyard and then just nurse them through the cellar and the wine fermentation with all the complications of the fires in Napa. We're still able to produce soft, rich wines, not over tannic, but...
I think we were very lucky if you looked at the weather pattern and how it came about, like we were pretty well done with all of our fruit here in Napa. I mean, it just stroke of luck. We had a really big week leading up to the fires, and the winery here in St. Helena was totally full. And when the fires happened, everything just sat there cold soaking.
Yeah.
Cold soaking is a technique that helps extract color and gives the wine like a soft, fruity texture. And they're all going through that process, and thank God.
Literally.
Because, I mean, if you didn't pick before the fires, that fruit hung out there in incredibly dense smoke. We did have a small amount of Cabernet we tried to pick after the fire, and I mean, it tasted like a dirty ashtray. It was horrible. And we didn't use it. We sold it off as bulk. Probably got destroyed, actually. But
it was cool. Driving through, it was like I drove with you up and down the valley a few days later. It was like a zombie movie.
Yeah,
just
it was like the
smoke
apocalypse.
everywhere. You just expect some zombie to walk out and attack you.
The Walking Dead.
One thing we were very fortunate at Rombauer is when the power came back on here in St. Helena, we saw it come on, and like our server switched back on. Obviously, our cell phones lit up like Christmas trees, but all of a sudden we could get back onto all of our remote systems and see what was happening with the tanks. And they're all still sitting there cold. But so we drove up. I remember, I'll never forget this, Luke. It was you and me and like 4 of the best interns, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We drove like literally towards the fire, much to my wife's horror.
We told him afterwards.
Yeah. And we literally inoculated every single tank, and we have a lot of automation in the cellar. And so for the 5 days after that, we could monitor the ferments remotely and let them pump over automatically and just watch them from a safe distance, quite literally, and let the wine take care of itself. And, hats off to the Rombauer family for allowing us to invest in, a lot of cutting edge technology to do that.
That's funny. I was getting text messages. Bob was behind me.
So enter stage right, our president and CEO, Bob Knievel, who's knocking on the door, which means I'm either in trouble
I'm in to make
Alan's in trouble.
I'm in to make a brief guest appearance.
I'm in
You
trouble.
probably should talk into the microphone, Bob.
I understand my friend Alan has accused me of stealing wine here.
No, I said borrowed. I said you borrowed it. You borrowed it.
Okay. Well, I will admit that the 15 vintage was my personal favorite in trying through all these wines yesterday, followed by the 13. They're all absolutely delightful, and I would just add that the fact that we've been aging these beautiful wines for you for all these years, and if you like Merlot, if you love Merlot,
Today's the day.
please make
I mean, we're
yourself
talking
acquainted
4
with these.
cases, 6 cases, 4
Yes.
cases.
Very little left, and please do order a bottle of this. They're absolutely exquisite, ready to drink. They're beautiful.
Please order them a bottle or two before Bob takes them all home.
It's absolutely fabulous. Anyway, I'll just weigh in here in the middle of this, and I'll get right out of your hair and just let you know that next week it will be myself and Cheryl and Nicolette from our wine club, and both Cheryl and Nicolette have been around Rombauer Vineyards for more than 2 decades. I have been acquainted with the family for almost 25 years myself, and next week it's going to be all about Chardonnay, and it's going to be about stories about the Rombauer family, the history of the winery, and including some really fun ones. So I hope you'll join us then. Please continue to enjoy. I want to say also thank you to the team here who puts on these wonderful live Rombauer Hour appearances every week. They do a fantastic job. It takes a lot of work. They're always a lot of fun. We love sharing all of this with you, and please continue to join us. Cheers. Here's to the joy of wine. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks, Bob.
See you now.
So Bob pretty much just stole our clothes.
By the way,
Is he
next
shutting us down now? Are we done? What's going on? I'm pretty sure we didn't talk about stats and cheese.
we need to talk about cheese for this
quick
last
stat
wine.
on this one. It's 85% Merlot, 10% Cabernet Sauvignon, 5% Petit Verdot, a lot like the 16 vintage. And then to steal sort of Richie's thunder, next week is International Chardonnay Day.
Yes, next Thursday is International Chardonnay Day. But before we go to that, we have our Joy of Wine, Joy of Food.
Joy of
pairing.
food.
We knew what you meant.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Sugar
So with
cheese.
this particular wine, we're going to talk a bit about the charcuterie meats that are on the table, actually. And these are really versatile. They're all derived from Italy. And when you're having a beautiful wine like our Merlot that has a natural acidity to it, it's nice to have a little salty fat with that too. So we have for you a bit of Coppa. We have a Toscana salami calabrese salami, and of course prosciutto, which is a
My
staff
personal favorite.
Yes, I mean it has just that beautiful marbleized fat content that's just incredible with most wines, but certainly with a wine like Merlot that has a lot of beautiful acidity and a beautiful primary fruit when it's a little bit, within the first decade. The joy of wine pairing, the joy of cooking pairing is going to be almost
making my mistakes for
vegetarian.
me.
I know I am. Except we've got stuffed butternut squash with sausage and apple.
It looks pretty yummy.
Actually, it looks great. And you were mentioning like what happens when you roast squash.
When you roast, squash, butternut squash is a type of pumpkin, and when you roast it and you get those caramelized burnt bits, it's like having molasses on it, and it's really sweet and yummy. And it's one of my roasted butternut squash is definitely one of my favorites. So I might cook that this weekend, I think.
Yeah. Well, okay. This wine is very nice.
It is definitely nice.
It's like pretty.
Yeah,
It is.
It's
Fresh texture.
It'll be interesting to see it when it's got 5 more years bottle age on it, and it's just softened a little on the primary fruit because it has so much fruit and acid, and it starts to get layers of complexity in it. And the one thing we do with a lot of our wines is we focus on fruit intensity and getting as much fruit intensity into them, and then letting them age in the bottle and develop those secondary characteristics.
Yeah.
So
5 more years. I'm thinking 5 more minutes.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's true. 5 more minutes would probably be a good place to.
Hey, mate, I got
let
a
it
question for you, Richie.
Yeah.
Yes. Do we always use the same 3 varieties in Merlot?
Generally, yes. I don't want to say we always do it. The last decade, it's been 75 to 85% Merlot with a small amount of Cabernet and even a small amount of Petit Verdot. In the past, we have used a little bit of Cab Franc, which is very aromatic and has a very floral component to it. But for what we're trying to achieve stylistically, to make a Merlot that is very classic in terms of its structure and fruit profile, so it tastes like a Merlot. It doesn't taste like an overripe generic red wine. We want to be able to tell that it's Merlot. So if we use something else, it could start to overpower the wine if it was something that didn't fit. But yeah, right now it's generally, I would say 99% of the time it's going to be those 3 varietals.
We add it to complement the Merlot.
Yeah, not overpower it. It's all about, helping lift the Merlot to make it shine without overpowering it.
Yes.
And again, to come back to like a house style of Merlot for what we've been making since 1983.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, Hollybag says, "Hey Jasper, how are you, mate?" Another intern. Hey, do you guys have a favourite at all today?
I'm going to go to 13. It's definitely
13.
my favourite.
Ask the crowd. What's your favourite?
Oh yeah, it'd be interesting to see what people have in their cellar and what they're tasting and what they're enjoying. So if you're online and want to write a comment in the feed about if you had the wines or you have a favourite Merlot you're drinking right now, I'd be curious to know what it is. But while you're doing that, I'm going to plug our photo competition. So you have until midnight tomorrow to lodge a photo. We're asking for your best Rombauer hour photo, whether that's paired with a charcuterie board or some other food or maybe a time and place. But if you could post your favourite Rombauer hour photo you have and food pairing online, tag us at Rombauer Vineyards on Instagram and hashtag Rombauer Hour. Or you can email it to info@rombauer.com. If you do that before midnight tomorrow night, a panel of expert judges from Rombauer will judge the photos. Yet to be decided who those experts are. But the best photo will receive a prize, and that's currently up on screen. You will get a very rare and the last of its kind that we currently have, a Rombauer Octagon cheese board, 3 of our Rombauer tea towels, 2 cheese knives, a copy of the latest edition of The Joy of Cooking, 2 coasters, a bottle opener, and 6 Rombauer etched wine glasses. So if you haven't yet lodged your photo for that, please do. And
It's also a survey.
And yes, in the feed right now, our marketing and sales team will be putting a link to a survey where Sam, one of our analysts, will be hotly looking for your responses. But we'd love to hear from you and work out exactly, well, we want to hear from you and hear what we've done well, what you'd like to see, and how we can make these live streams better. So when you see that link in the feed, please click on it. We'd love to hear from you. And yes. And I was going to do another little spiel right now about what we're doing next week, but it is, as Alan said, and as we got crashed by the CEO, Bob, next week it'll be Bob. Bob has been the president and CEO here at Rombauer for about 5 years. but his history with the Rombauer family goes back with Kerner over 25 years as a close friend, and he was one of the founding members of the Rombauer board of directors. So Bob will be sharing copious stories about his time with Kerner and the Rombauer family. I know I'll be watching. It'll be very, very fun. And what's really exciting is if you're a wine club member or you've ever called the winery and have a question about your wine club shipment or a problem with your wine or something that needs to be resolved, you've probably got Cheryl Rydell or Nicolette Ortega. Cheryl Rydell's our consumer DTC director.
DTC, direct to consumer.
And Nicolette is our wine club manager. And they are literally, for a lot of our Rombauer customers, the voice on the other end of the phone. So tune in next week and you'll be able to put a face to the voice. And Cheryl's been with the company now over 27 years and Nicolette over 19 years. So you're going to have,
some good stories coming.
Over 50 years of experience with Rombauer on the show next week, drinking our classic Rombauer Chardonnay for International Chardonnay Day. And lastly, I just have to put a plug in. Today is my mum's birthday in Australia. So happy birthday, Mum. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're still watching.
Ali says she wants a case of the 13 Merlot.
And the other winemaker, Andrew, his wife.
No, your sister-in-law.
My sister-in-law,
Ailey,
Ailey, wants a case of the 13 Merlot. Yes, I'll do my best to get that delivered to Australia. We'll see how we go. But thank you for joining us, and we will see you all again in the future. We'll be moving these to a monthly stream after this. And I'm going to get one last plug in there. Happy birthday, Mum. But this year, due to obviously what's happening in the world, our Joy of Wine event that we usually have our annual Chardonnay and release party here at the winery, we're moving that to virtual. So it usually there's a number of tickets and not everybody gets a ticket. But this year it'll be virtual and we'll be asking people to tune in from around the world. It won't be in this bland room. It will be quite the live event with all sorts of things we're doing around the winery and cutting between them. So I hope you'll join us for that.
That sounds like fun.
It'll be fun. We'll all be working. It's going to be fun.
July 25th, I think, on that.
July 25th. You are right. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you again in the future.
And drink Merlot.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.